and welcome to another episode of Search Off the Record, a podcast coming to you from the Google Search team discussing all things search and having some fun along the way. My name is Martin, and I'm joined today by John from the Search Relations team, of which I'm also part of. Hi, John.
Hi, Martin.
Also with us in the studio is Mihai Aperghis. Mihai, hi.
Hey, John. Hey, Martin. Thanks for having me.
Would you be so kind to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Sure. So I'm an SEO enthusiast and entrepreneur based in Romania. And I started tinkering with SEO almost 20 years ago, about 2006, something like that.
Oh, wow.
I was back in my university days as a student, and I really like figuring out how things work, and SEO was this interesting, mysterious thing that a lot of people are trying to figure out. So I did what other people were doing back then, is try to create a few websites and try to get them to rank, basically. So that slowly morphed into a kind of a freelancing job where I started to do SEO for other people's websites. And after finishing my master's degree in Bucharest, I decided to open my own agency. And I think that was around 2011, 2012.
Wow, so you've been around for a while, huh?
Yeah, I basically just tried to transform my hobby into a legitimate business. And yeah, ever since then, my passion for SEO constantly grew. So I created a few SEO tools along the way, and also tried to get myself involved as much as possible into the SEO community. First by joining a lot of John's SEO office hours, and then becoming a product expert, although I think it was a top contributor back then, on the Google official Search Central forums.
Cool. And that's why you're here in the office today, because we're doing a product expert summit in Zurich at the moment. We thought it would be a great idea to maybe invite someone from the product expert group to join us for the podcast.
Yes. So I don't know if everyone out there listening to the podcast knows the help community, or the forums, as we call them. Would you like to introduce them a little bit? Like, how does the community work? How does the forum work from your perspective? Like, who goes there? What goes on there? How can I, as a non-SEO, navigate these places? How does that work?
Sure. So I can tell you why I joined the forums in the first place. First of all, just as with John's SEO office hours, I think the forums are a good way to kind of bridge the gap between the official documentation, which is kind of catered toward, broad. It has kind of a broad appeal, whereas the office hours and the forums kind of cater more towards specific use cases and issues that people might have. It's also the case that I know that Googlers can't really come up with their own personal opinions. So I think it's a good chance for us Ps, which are non-Googlers, to use our own experience and come up with suggestions that are our own, and be able to help people along the way.
That's pretty cool.
It's also a learning opportunity for me, because I get to see some issues that I might have not experienced myself before. And it's just a joy to help out other people.
Yeah, I really like the forums as well, exactly for the reason that you said. The documentation has to be like broad, because we don't know what the context is, what people are coming to the documentation for. Is it like, are they trying to learn about the topic? Are they trying to fix a specific problem? What kind of environment are they in? And in the forum, you can have these kind of discussions like, hi, my WordPress site has this symptom. What could it be? And it's very, very hard to make this documentation specifically for these kind of problems, especially if it's like a thing like WordPress, where you can have like so many different plugins and different WordPress versions and like different configurations and stuff. And I really enjoy the forum for exactly these kind of things. And I find it super interesting to browse it. As you say, like, it's a learning opportunity.
And I think the other part that I find really useful about the help forums is that a lot of people, when they come there, they don't know the terminology, where if they knew which words to search for, they could probably find some help article about it or some blog post somewhere. But oftentimes they just don't know, like, what is it actually called? Like, I have this weird issue that I can try to describe, but I don't know like what the official names are. And the in the forum, people can join in and be like, oh, you mean canonicalization? And then they're like, what kind of weird word is this? But at least that gives them a little bit more of a hook to find out more about what they could be doing differently.
Yeah, and there's a big spectrum of people who join in. Some of them have little to no experience. Some of them are more familiar with the terms and they have this specific issue that they might have not been able to find a resolution for in the documentation. And it's usually the type of threads that people create are either around more technical stuff or Search Console related issues, and that's usually more related to crawling, indexing. And there's the other types of threads which are more related to ranking, like I did everything right and my site doesn't rank, or my traffic went down and please help me with this. The first one, the more technical related issues, are easier to solve, or easier for us PEs to provide an answer to, because we can always point to the documentation and figure out in your specific use case you should do this and that. Whereas with the ranking issues, that's a bit harder because it also tends to generate some heated discussion from now and then. And
most of the time.
And what we usually do in those kind of scenarios is try to go with the user and try to help them diagnose and at least eliminate some of the usual suspects, like try to figure out, is there any technical thing that might prevent you from ranking well? Afterwards, we maybe try to look at whatever search algorithm updates have been launched recently and try to correlate any traffic changes with those. And afterwards, we kind of get to the part that's more subjective, where it's like content quality and other aspects such as that, where it's more of everybody's or each PE's personal experience that comes in and tries to come up with some recommendations on what the user should improve.
I think ranking questions are fundamentally impossible for us as Google to help with. Not so much because it's like we can't diagnose them, but because there are just so many different ways to kind of look at those problems. And that feels like an optimal situation where community input is really valuable, because you could go this way and maybe create more content on this topic. You could go the other way and like maybe delete a lot of your junk. You could improve your design. You could simplify the design. It's like there are lots of different options that can lead to improvements with ranking. And sometimes I feel site owners just need to see that there are different ways to do it, and no one way is the right way. And that's something where I find the experience from the PE community is really helpful. Where it's like, if people don't agree, that's, I think, also a really strong sign that there are just different ways to do it. And that's fine.
And I think one cool thing that we can also do as PEs is that if we can figure things out, we can always escalate it further to our private PE community, where other PEs can pitch in with their ideas, and community managers can also choose to escalate it to the Google product teams. So whenever we think that, okay, a user has an issue that we think shouldn't happen or shouldn't be there, we can try to advocate for them towards Google in order to either get the issue fixed or at least figure out why is it happening in the first place. So we're always trying to advocate on behalf of the user. I'm mentioning this because some of the users think that we are just an extension of the Google team, where in fact we're trying to help users based on our own experience. And if we can figure things out, we're always trying to help them by escalating it to Google and trying to get a response, and maybe along the way solve a bug or improve some aspect that Google's might have not noticed initially.
Hmm. The other thing that you mentioned is that a lot of it is, so you had like technical and we had ranking, but a lot of this is also Google Search Console. And that I find interesting because I had lots of conversations with the Search Console team when I was visiting them in the office. Their job is surprisingly hard because they have to cater to like professionals who are like managing hundreds of websites and with like millions of pages. And then there's like Martin who runs a bakery and wants to know how his website's doing in search. And and canonicalization, what the hell is that? What does it mean to be discovered but not crawled? And they have to somehow figure out a way to bring that into an interface that somewhat, to some degree, works for everyone. What are like the bigger challenges with Search Console then in the forums?
So some of the bigger challenges are for people to understand. For example, one of the most common questions I come up against is how can I solve these specific notifications when sometimes there's nothing you need to do about?
Oh,
So, for example, these pages are listed as having a canonical tag and not being indexed. And in some cases, that's fine. Or maybe they're not
Yeah.
indexed due to them having a no index tag that WordPress put there because it kind of makes sense for those pages not to be indexed, but they're shown in Search Console. And some people think that, if it's not indexed, then it's an issue that I need to resolve in order for my website to perform better.
True, yeah. And the same with like 404s. It's like, it found these 5,000 404 pages. And it's like, well, you've removed 5,000 products from your shop. So, yeah.
So would you say the errors in Search Console are not helpful?
Well, I think some people don't really differentiate errors from just simple notifications and messages that kind of tell you this is the status of your website. It's not the case that you should always do something about it. So this is more of a notification. These pages aren't indexed. Just so you know, you might have you might have de-indexed them intentionally, and that's fine. There are some cases where some pages might not be indexed and you might want to do something about that. And that's where I think a lot of users come to the forum and try to make sure they understand everything correctly and try to make sure they're not missing something and get a bit more information that they might find in the documentation.
Okay. So kind of they would go to the forum and say like, here is this report in Search Console that says I have so many issues. What do I need to do now?
That's right.
And then you might look at that and say, well, it looks like maybe you updated your website and you removed a lot of pages, so it's expected that all of these errors are there. And it's not that you have to fix them all. But I guess sometimes, I hope sometimes you also look at the report and say, oh, actually, you do have to fix these issues.
Yep.
Yeah.
Especially when you have things like crawl not indexed or discover not indexed. A lot of users are worried, okay, I did everything right. Why are these pages not getting indexed? And us as PEs, we can take a look at the website and figure out whether there's anything that they could actually do. It's usually around those two issues. It's not necessarily something technical that they need to solve, like add this tag or remove or add this whatever thing. But it's it's kind of case specific, and we try to figure out whether there's something they could do to improve and get those pages indexed. And sometimes some pages, at the end of the day, Google doesn't index all of the pages, so some pages will always be there, and sometimes we just tell users that as well.
Cool. You also built a kind of an add-on to Search Console, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about the add-on that you created?
Sure. So I'm lucky enough to have a partner in my agency that kind of focuses on the more creative and marketing things and marketing aspects of SEO, Alexandra. And that kind of allows me more to focus on more technical stuff and analytics. And I think analytics is very important for both webmasters and SEOs to try to look at the data and extract insights and come up with a strategy on how to improve their website and get more performance in terms of traffic and impressions. About 8 years ago, I found out about the Search Console API. I think it was Webmaster Tools API back then. And I basically, in my SEO work, I try to leverage my technical background. Since I finished a technical university, I have some basic programming skills, and with a lot of tutorials, I try to kind of cut down on the more repetitive aspects of SEO, kind of the more boring part, and that would leave me more time to focus on insights, coming up with strategies, and so on. And as I mentioned, about 8 to 10 years ago, there was the case that within Webmaster Tools, you had a 90-day window. You now have 16 months, but back then you had a 90-day window where the data was available. So we had to remember every month to download the data and save it to be able to reference it later if we needed to.
Mm-hmm.
And that was quite manual. And we use a lot of Google Sheets. And Google Sheets has this programming language that's similar to JavaScript that allows you to add some functionality. And combined with the API from Webmaster Tools, I built a quick script to be able to extract data from Webmaster Tools and extract it directly into Google Sheets so we can save it for later use. Afterwards, I simply built a UI around it so to make it easier for both me and my team to extract the data into Google Sheets. And it was just kind of the natural next step was to basically just make it public. And one other thing I noticed when using the API, and that was very interesting to me, is that there seems to be a lot more data in the API that you might be able to find in the UI, especially for larger projects. And the data is also structured a lot better to be able to offer you or make it easier for you to extract insights. For example, you can extract all of the queries and the pages associated with them at the same time, whereas in the UI, you kind of have to click on each query to see whatever pages received clicks or impressions. So you can do that at scale, and sometimes you can download, even extract from the API hundreds of thousands of rows, which makes it very useful for, especially if you have a larger website that receives a lot of traffic for a bunch of different terms.
Cool.
Nice.
Afterwards, one other automation I thought about was to make it even easier to extract those kind of monthly data from Webmaster Tools and afterwards Search Console. So without even logging into Google Sheets. So the next step was to build an automation so you can set it up. So every month, the add-on extracts that data on your behalf and puts it into the Google Sheet of your choice. And you don't even have to worry about or remember that, oh, I need to log into Google Sheets and extract the data. And
that's nice.
And after the URL inspections API was launched, I also integrated that into the tool, just because that's kind of a different aspect of scale. With the API, you can do like thousands of URL inspections in a few minutes, whereas with the UI, you kind of have to do one by one.
Okay. Wow. It seems like almost like all APIs in Search Console make it to. I really love the kind of monthly automation. I always thought that was something that maybe in Search Console we could add something along those lines as well. We have, I think, the monthly emails that come from Search Console Insights, which are a little bit like lightweight overview, but it feels like, I don't know, a monthly dump into a spreadsheet. That's like a pretty cool idea. It's like, I don't know, like, why don't we have that?
I just love
we should talk with someone.
Not PageSpeed. I just love the Search Console Insights variation because it's such an easy to use, broken down look at your website. So if it's like Martin's Bakery, I'm loving it because I feel like now we're covering all three, so to speak, tiers. Like the people who are like, I just have a business website, I just want to know how it's doing. That's like the Search Console Insights. And then like the average kind of person, the average user, or the ad hoc kind of debugging thing where you just go into Search Console and use the UI, or the power user like you clearly are, Mihai, who can just like do pretty much all the things they need and get all the data they need to then do their own breakdowns and analysis in Sheets, which I think is pretty cool.
Right. That's one of the main reason I made the tool public, simply because I figured if I have this issue, there's probably a lot of people in the SEO community that have this issue, as well as webmasters. So yeah, I made it public in order to try to give back to the SEO community and help other people solve the same issues that I had.
Cool. Have you tried the BigQuery integration?
I have not, simply because we're so used within our team to work with Google Sheets, and I found Google Sheets very useful to be able to diagnose data and performance issues and extract insights without being too much of a technical user. And that's kind of why the add-on is as simple as possible. It's just a way to, here are the parameters, give me the data, and it gives you the raw data, and it has privacy in mind as well, in the idea that all of the data is sent directly to Google Sheets. We don't use any servers. Everything is directly from the API into your spreadsheet in order to get all of the raw data that the API has.
So cool. Yeah. I use spreadsheets for everything. I think at home when I say anything, it's like I put it in a spreadsheet. If I need to create like a giant database for something, I will just put it into a spreadsheet. I know like Martin is probably like this meme of people using spreadsheets for databases, but it's especially Google Sheets is that thing where it's almost like a server backend that you don't really have to like mess with. Sure, it's kind of slow if you kind of need to do a lot of things, but it's easy to put in. It's easy to try things out, copy, paste, do like simple graphs and things. So I am a big fan of spreadsheets. What do you see in the future? It's like everyone is adding AI. Are you adding AI to Google Sheets?
That's one feature I had in mind, although so I still am pretty involved into the SEO work that our agency does. So I'm getting a lot of insights based on our own work, and there's some power users that also email me with feature requests, and some of them are doable in the sense that it is something that I could implement in the future. Some of them kind of depend on the APIs that Google has available. For example, a lot of people are requesting indexing information, which is not yet available in the API. But other things, right now, the tool is just made to extract the raw data, but perhaps you could, or I could implement something that would provide some basic insights similar to the Search Console emails that every webmaster gets. So I think that's one thing that would be not very hard to implement and would be very useful to a lot of people. Afterwards, yes, I think with the advent of LLMs, a lot of people would maybe find it more useful to use natural language to ask, give me insights about this data, what queries are performing well, what queries aren't, which pages have issues, and so on. And that's actually possible right now, just not with this tool. I actually created a separate tool called Search Analytics for GPT, which is, again, just a simple integration of ChatGPT with the Search Console APIs to be able to ask it and retrieve data into ChatGPT. Although I don't see that working for very big projects. Maybe you just want to get like top 10 queries or top 10 pages and things like that. But probably for big projects, you still will rely on Google Sheets.
Spreadsheets, woohoo! Yeah,
spreadsheets
are better.
As databases. I flinched a little bit as a developer there. Yeah. Oh God. That's really, really cool stuff. And I wonder, is there like a place online where people can find you and your tools?
Well, I try to be active from now and then on both Twitter and LinkedIn. And Either my agency website, which is vertify.agency, or the tool website, which is searchanalyticsforsheets.com. And I guess you can also find me from now and then in the Google Search Central forums, acting as a PE, trying to help people out with their issues.
Ooh, very nice.
So I know some people at Search Console. If there's anything in the API that you would like, what would that be?
Well, the main thing would be indexing data. I would love to have, and a lot of people would love to have, everything regarding indexing in the API. So basically, all of the indexing reports that you currently have in Search Console, have them directly in the API, so you can extract them in Google Sheets and maybe be able to correlate them with the performance data in order to find out if you're having issues and try to extract insights from there. And there's also the issue that within the UI, you also have, I think, 1,000 pages, 1,000 rows available for each indexing report, whereas in the API, I assume that we will be able to have a lot more data. So that's, again, a very useful thing to have, especially if you have a bigger website.
Yeah. I can't promise anything, of course. And it's like, I just hear this now. So if you're listening to this podcast, don't assume that next week Search Console is going to launch an indexing report API, but who knows? I think with regards to the amount of data, that might be tricky because some websites are really large and like it will always need to be a sample of the actual or of the full data. Because I don't know, if you have a giant e-commerce site and you have 50 million 404 pages, like I don't see Google being able to give you a list of 50 million 404 pages. Or even as a site owner, it's like, what would you do with 50 million 404 pages? Usually it's some systemic issue and you fix it, and then it fixes 10 million 404 pages. You don't need to manually go through and check for, like, I don't know, millions of pages. But okay, indexing API or indexing report API, I guess that sounds pretty cool. We should talk with the Search Console people.
Yes,
That
definitely.
would be great.
Definitely.
Even if it's a lower amount of data, just being able to put it into a Google Sheets and not having to export them. If you're doing all of your data analysis in Google Sheets already, having that feature and being able to extract it easily into Google Sheets along with all of your performance data and maybe URL inspections and what have you would be probably very useful for people. In terms of the data amount, I don't know. I thought the same about the performance API, the search analytics API. And if you have like 1 million pages that have received traffic, the API will actually give you all of the 1 million pages. So it seems that there's a lot more data that the API is able to provide versus the UI, which is always kind of a sample of the data.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Okay. We should
We'll take that back.
chat with some people.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll take that to the team. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Mihai. It has been a huge honor.
Thank you so much for having me. And yeah, it's been an honor to be a guest of the Search Off the Record podcast.
And also thanks, John, for being here with me today.
Well, thank you, Martin, for having me.
Wow.
It was a pleasure that I was allowed to join.
Oh, of course. No, of course. Obviously. Anyway, thanks to all of you as well for joining us and listening in into this wonderful episode. And next time on Search of the Record, we'll be talking about shopping. So thanks again for listening, folks, and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
We've been having fun with these podcast episodes, and we hope that you, the listener, have found them both entertaining and insightful too. Feel free to drop us a note on Twitter at Google Search C, or chat with us at one of the next upcoming events that we go to if you have any thoughts. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much, and goodbye!